Time for another completionist! South Park the fractured but whole. South Park is so immature sometimes. South Park doesn't give a shit. Got it.
Dying is easy. Comedy is hard. People have noted Edmund Keane as the man who said this on his deathbed, but we're not actually sure if he really did. Anyways, one of the hardest things about comedy is trying to keep everything fresh and not just look like you're doing the same thing as you've done before. As you can tell, I struggle with this as well after making content for 7 years. But Matt Stone and Trey Parker have been making South Park for 22 years, and they have constantly been relevant, clever, and really, really funny. With their latest foray into video games, Matt Stone and Trey Parker have not just made a great comedy game, but one of the best South Park properties of all time. It's time to complete South Park, the Fractured Butthole.
Really, no comment about that?
The new challenger! Yeah! Danger!
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another
What
brand
the
new
hell,
episode of
John?
Completionist. We don't just beat the games, we complete them. And I am super stoked to finally return to the universe of South Park. Now, I loved the Stick of Truth, and I cannot wait to see how much the Stick of Truth they could fit into the Fractured Butthole. So let's get on in there. The Fractured Butthole had big shoes to fill following the Stick of Truth, because not only was the Stick of Truth one of the best RPGs of the year that it came out, but it was one of the best licensed games of all time. And it's not just based on some random thing that's popular in the moment. It's based on South Park. South Park has been around for over 20 years. It's won Emmys and a Peabody. It's been nominated for an Academy Award. South Park is no longer just a cartoon passed around on a VHS tape. It's one of the most successful franchises of all time. So how do you follow up the most successful game in the most successful franchise? Well, they almost didn't. Both Matt Stone and Trey Parker said they were open to making a sequel to A Stick of Truth, depending on how it was received. But at the same time, they were talking about making another South Park film. However, they could only work on one big project at a time. Once they came up with the title, it was clear that a video game was the right choice. Originally, they wanted to call the game The Butthole of Time, but Ubisoft wouldn't let them use the word butthole in the title. So Stone and Parker did what they do best. They ignored corporate instructions and did what they wanted to do anyway. And so the Fractured Butthole was born. The story starts off the day after the Stick of Truth ends, and you're playing superheroes with one goal: to make $1 billion on a superhero franchise. Not everyone agrees on how to start the franchise, thus causing the one thing every superhero dreads: civil war. In true South Park fashion, what seems to be a simple genre parody soon goes to crazy town, and you're fighting racist police officers, Lovecraftian elder gods, and the most terrifying enemy of all, Mitch Connor. Now, just like in the Stick of Truth, everything matches the aesthetic of kids playing. Trey Parker said that they didn't want the Fractured Butthole to feel like a superhero video game. He wanted that Earthbound feel, making players remember what it was like to be in the 4th grade playing in your friend's backyard. And quite honestly, they nailed it. You can see those details everywhere. Every costume looks handmade, whether it's with a Tupperware helmet or rocky shoulders made with egg cartons. When you wander the streets of South Park, adults always talk down to you like you don't understand what's going on. And combat constantly gets broken up by a car driving through the street. These small details aren't just funny, they make you feel like you're one of the kids in South Park. Speaking of combat, a few things have changed. You still wander the town of South Park solving puzzles, gathering collectibles, and engaging in random battles. But now those battles are less Final Fantasy and more Final Fantasy tactics. You move around on a grid and are able to attack your enemies with different abilities based on your classes. This adds so much more strategy to the game and makes you much more engaged in the battles than in the Stick of Truth. It feels like you're actually running around in the street and having kids superhero battles. While you get to see the world through the eyes of a child, the game is still filled with the humor of an adult. And I wouldn't have it any other way. There are plenty of mini games where you have to perform joystick movements in order to poop in the toilet, and even one when you have to gyrate and fart on a businessman's crotch. Basically, this game does what every successful South Park project has done. Take something crass, dumb, and simple, and take it to brand new heights. In the words of Bob Ross, you can paint the Mona Lisa with a 2-inch brush. Yeah, you could.
Infinity War.
While the battles in the Stick of Truth were a great parody of classic turn-based RPGs, the Fractured Butthole takes things to a new level with genuinely compelling gameplay. And I feel that this makes the Fractured Butthole a better game over the Stick of Truth. It feels like a combination of Earthbound with Disgaea, but with a lot more swearing. As I mentioned earlier, you move around on a grid system. Now this is important because you can position your team around the enemies, leading to knockback. With knockback, you can hit baddies into your allies or other enemies, causing more damage. And this setup gets addicting. It becomes immediately fun and forces you to put that extra level of thought into these fights compared to the Stick of Truth. Instead of going through the battles to get to the next story moment, you're actually engaged in the combat. Also, your total allies have doubled. In the Stick of Truth, you get 6 buddies to choose from and only one could assist you in battle at a time. Now, you have 3 allies on the field with whom you can swap out amongst a total of 12 characters. And since each character has unique abilities and attacks, it gives you so many different potential teams. You have classes as well. Initially in the game, you can only choose 1 class out of 3, but pretty soon after, you can multi-class and choose 3 classes to mix at a total of 10 classes. And you can change these classes at any time. This massively beats Stick of Truth, where you choose 1 class out of 4 in the beginning and you're just stuck with it. As you can tell from earlier, I really liked knockback and causing extra damage. So I would combine the power moves of the Brutalist and the Cyborg with the Speedster. The Speedster has an amazing ability called Double Edge that allows you to move twice in 1 turn at the cost of your next turn, but it's worth it to take out an enemy in 1 round. However, not all fights are decided by beating up all the enemies on screen. A lot of boss fights give you new goals to match in order to move past them. For example, getting to the other side of the map before you get crushed, or knocking enemies into specific spots to be taken out by bigger enemies' attacks. This creates just enough variety in the battles and really makes the boss fights feel important. One of the coolest new additions to combat is your fart powers. Along with Kenny, aka Mysterion, you are the only kid with a superpower. You can control your farts. Your farts are so powerful that they will make you travel through time. I'll say it again just in case you didn't hear me from my sickness. You can travel through time with your farts, and it's so much fun. This time travel ability allows you to skip enemies' turns, pause time, and beat the crap out of them, or even summon yourself from the past. You're like Doc Brown, but instead of a bunch of old garbage to power your time travel, you just use beans. Now, I had so much fun with this combat, but I couldn't wait to try the Danger Deck DLC. Danger Deck adds a lot of difficult battles that actually challenged me, but I don't think it's really worth it. While the gameplay is there, it gets incredibly frustrating and doesn't have any of the humor from the main game to balance it all out. Now, your farts and allies can combine to help you explore South Park. You can pause and reverse time in order to solve certain puzzles, perform Fart Core with Human Kite to race to new heights, and launch Professor Chaos's hamster minions out of your butt to cut out electricity panels. Now, these puzzles are mainly used to get collectibles, things like artifacts to power up my character, clothing to make myself look cooler, and Yowie featuring Tweak and Craig because I appreciate art. You can also earn more artifacts by crafting, but it doesn't always seem to be worth it, and the artifacts you pick up are more interesting anyways. All of this new gameplay makes the game so much more interactive and fun, and that's why I think this is the better game overall than Stick of Truth. It actually makes me feel like I'm a part of the battle and strategizing and not just pushing buttons on the controller. This whole game was so engaging and fun for me that without even trying, I accidentally completed it. Seriously, shortly after I beat the game, I got the Platinum Trophy, even when there were a good amount of trophies that were not story-based. Every single part of the gameplay, whether it was battling or traveling all throughout South Park, was so fascinating to me that I had to complete it. And how often does that happen?
Homecoming Phase 3.
While the improved combat makes the Fractured Butthole the best South Park game, it's your emotional connection to the characters that makes it one of the best South Park products, period. Each playable character is represented by a character sheet showing their superhero name, as well as their religion, sexual orientation, alignment, and even weakness. While each kid's superhero alias is a great example of children making up superpowers with what they have around the house, they also represent each child's personality. Cartman is so selfish and will do whatever he has to do to get what he wants, much like his Batman-based Coon character, who will do whatever it takes to be the face of their superhero franchise. Kyle, who often likes to take the moral high road in the show, is the Human Kite, a character who literally flies above everyone else. But I think my favorite has got to be Jimmy. Jimmy is Fast Pass, a speedster character, representing his quick wit and also the fact that sometimes his brain works faster than his mouth. These personality traits are further shown in each character's ultimate ability. Carmen literally spends most of it promoting the Coon and Friends franchise, while Tweak and Craig become real-life yaoi art, symbolizing that you have helped reconnect the young couple while also confusing all of the enemies in combat. But the best character to learn about and see who they are is yourself. You start off by choosing the game's difficulty, which is just choosing your skin color. While this doesn't affect the actual game difficulty, you do make less money the darker your skin, and people treat you very differently. It's all kind of messed up, but in its own South Park way. You are then given a blank character sheet. It's up to you to fill it through different side quests. These involve meeting with Mr. Mackey, battling microaggressions with PC Principal, and playing a Flappy Bird Robot Unicorn Attack combo minigame to help a gay fish's mom to get to heaven so you can meet Jesus to talk about your religion. The last one actually makes more sense knowing that the gay fish was once Kanye West, but you have to watch the show to get a lot of this stuff. Filling out your character sheet causes a rift to build between your parents. You move to South Park to go into hiding. Every time you enter your house at the end of the day, you see them fight about how you talking to people about yourself is going to lead to danger to your whole family. They then leave, eat pot brownies and drink wine, and you eat dinner by yourself. It is so genuinely sad, and is emphasized by seeing this repeat every in-game day. It shows that the new kid is able to get through these tough moments in life, and maybe you can too. And that's it for the main game, which is why it's so great that there's a story DLC. These include From Dusk Till Casa Bonita, where you battle vamp kids to save Mysterion's sister with the help of a goth, and Bring the Crunch, where you visit Lake Titicaca with Jimmy and engage in a horror parody. While the two story-based DLCs are funny and add fun new characters and classes, they're way too short for their price. It's a total of 7 hours of gameplay for $24. But even though the DLC was overpriced for my taste, I still think that the main game can still hold its own against everything else South Park has done. The movie showed that you can take something dumb and crass and use that as great social commentary. The Make Love Not Warcraft episode perfectly enveloped gamer culture and is still one of their most popular episodes. But the Fractured Butthole does something that none of these other things can do. They put you in the middle of an episode of South Park and make you experience everything firsthand like you're a kid again.
End game. Oh my gosh.
Completing the Fractured Butthole was so easy that I didn't even realize that I did it, which is also why I'm not upset that you don't get anything for beating the game. However, there is a cool side mission that you absolutely should do if you already made it to the end of the game. After you get the Token Experience trophy, change your ethnicity to anything other than black. Go to Freeman's Tacos and visit Morgan Freeman. Punch him 3 times, and then get ready for the toughest fight of the game. If you successfully beat him, you get yourself a golden taco. And that's about it completion-wise. There's no special mode or anything after you beat the game, just the DLC. However, if you head up north, you will find yourself at the gates of Canada, hinting at future DLC that, knowing Matt and Trey, probably won't happen and is just here to troll people. Please don't let this be the case and bring something back to the cool Canada section in the Stick of Truth. Okay, thanks, bye. Completing South Park The Fractured Butthole has given me the confidence to create my own superhero franchise in 4 phases. Phase 1, establish the characters of my franchise by beating the game and taking 26 hours and only 5 deaths, while collecting 35 trophies. Phase 2, get the audience to know and love my characters by developing my character sheet, as well as the character sheets for 12 other characters. Phase 3, create as much content as possible by collecting 40 pieces of yaoi art, discovering 240 artifacts, and owning almost 400 articles of clothing. Oh, and 14 member berries. How could I forget those? Phase 4, make as much money with way too expensive DLC that costs about $30 for less than 10 hours of content. And this will all result in the Ross Completionist franchise we've always all wanted. I loved my time playing South Park The Fractured Butthole.
Oh my gosh,
The game
Gerard.
sucks you in with its engaging gameplay, and the ability to connect yourself to the characters is awesome. Not to mention the fact this game is really, really funny. However, the DLC has a pretty high barrier of entry. It's expensive and doesn't really have that much more to add to the entirety of the mythos of the game. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finish it.
Finish it!